Morven Val with Paragon Warsuits, an Immolator to split a unit like Novitiates, Celestian Sacrosancts with a Hospitaller. These are the basics of any competitive 40k Adepta Sororitas army. So what if I didn't include any of them and went to a tournament? What would I rely on? What would I use? This is my Exorcist. It fires D6 plus 2, strength 10, AP minus 3, D6 damage missiles each turn. It's indirect fire. There is no escaping from it. I have upgraded it so that it can re-roll the number of shots for that Exorcist missile launcher. I am in the Army of Faith. I can increase that armor penetration to 4. With a Castigator, I can increase that armor penetration to 5. While I could use an Immolator to ignore the benefit of cover, I'm probably going to hit on a 4+ anyway because I will have the Seraphim to spot the indirect fire shots of the Exorcist. The Exorcist is perfect. And if for some reason the Exorcist wasn't enough, I have a second Exorcist. I am still trying in this event. I'm not using a Dogmata. But it is a very off-meta list. And if other contestants of the All-Stars Chrono Cup tournament are watching, that's cheating. Go away. I think good players that use a meta army are cowards who don't want to truly be tested. Have loyalty to the weak factions and show off what you can do with them. Leave the meta lists to inexperienced players, the players who don't have the time to learn a list and army and find out what works well for them. They will pick the best units and have a go. And if they get cocky because they have a meta list, I will crush them with my cobbled together rubbish and experience of playing the game. No lie, I have had a Dark Angels player using the most meta Wrath of the Rock list of the time tell me that Imperial agents are overpowered because 3 of their units get to infiltrate? That's insane! There are so many kinds of weapons on the kill teams. Your detachment rule lets you just pick an objective and you get better objective control, leadership, and an invulnerable save? Of course the Imperial agents are overpowered. The most OP faction. Maybe no one plays them because they're harder to collect unless you play kill team or want to collect a random assortment of infantry. Other people did laugh at that player when he told them that agents were OP, and they looked at my agents list which had no breaches, no police officers, no assassins, and then they laughed harder. Don't be cocky. The Chrono Cup All-Stars event is ongoing rather than taking place entirely within a weekend. This is because the people involved are very busy, and it's hard to organize games with our schedules. So as updates to the balance patch happen mid-event, we get to update our list as we go. I'm not going to overthink it and rewrite the lists. After the last patch, my Adepta Sororitas list dropped by 55 points. So instead of swapping units in and out, I added in a Magifier, because they're 55 points now. They never get taken because a Hospitaller is generally better, but I want to prove that having Sisters with a 2+ armor save and a 4+ invulnerable save can be really tough. And it's very useful now, especially when the benefit of cover does nothing to reduce armor penetration anymore. An alternative would have been to add 2 Death Cult Assassins. That would give me a nice cheap blocking unit that has lone operative, and they can be sent to complete actions. Legends are match play legal, whatever that means in this edition that has tournament packs mentioning different ways to play, like narrative play and stuff, but also there is only one way to play this edition. None of that makes sense. And legends are allowed in this event. The detachments I'm using are the Army of Faith with the Chorus of Condemnation. The Chorus of Condemnation because it makes my Exorcist and Seraphim work better. Mainly the Exorcist, mainly the upgrade that gives them the ability to reroll a number of shots, because if they don't get many shots, that's gonna suck. And the Seraphim have the benefit of being able to spot units, extend that 15-inch hidden range to 18 inches so other units in my army can shoot at the enemy. I can always spot the enemy with my Seraphim, shoot and then move. If I need to get in then get out, hit and run tactics work. And there's a stratagem so that if the Exorcist shoots something, for example, if it was going to shoot at something that's now in line of sight of one of my units because the Seraphim are looking at it, so it hits on a 4 when firing indirectly as long as it didn't move. After it is shot and caused a battle shock test, the Seraphim can have devastating wounds on their weapons, like a lot of hand flamer shots. Hand flamers can then punch upwards, as can bolt pistols. The Army of Faith is there to give me lots of miracle dice. Because of the changes to how miracle dice and acts of faith work in 11th edition, it's a minor difference, mainly around the core rules, not to do with changes to the army rule per se, but a unit is only destroyed when everyone in that unit is destroyed, and then you get 1 miracle dice. So if you have 10 Archoflagellants with a priest, in 10th edition, when those 11 were destroyed, you would get 2 miracle dice, 1 for the Archoflagellants, 1 for the preacher. In 11th edition, you get 1 miracle dice when all 11 are destroyed. The unit is not destroyed until all of the models that started detached are gone. That's one avenue where there's fewer miracle dice than before. So people have to decide whether they're going to have some disposable throwaway units that will die and give you a miracle dice, or do what I like to do and keep your sisters alive and get miracle dice in other ways. 2 of the stratagems give you a miracle dice as long as you can kill at least 1 enemy model. And I'm taking 2 of the 3 enhancements that give you more miracle dice. I would have liked to have all 3, but the way I was going to take it is to have 2 on characters that ended up being in the same unit, and each unit can only have 1 enhancement. Can't have 2 enhancements on characters in the same unit. App doesn't let you, and we have to take the app as the main source of the rules, because that's the only place that all of the rules are currently. Not a good system. And I definitely expect rules to come up where someone says, I can do this thing, and I say, no, you can't. There's a rule buried in the app that you've never seen before that says it doesn't work. You have to be really into 40k to know all the rules of 40k. And I don't know if anyone is. And especially right now where it's summertime. Lots of people go on holiday, they don't watch YouTube, they don't care much about 40k if they're not going to be playing 40k due to looking after children. So views are going to be down for the next month or so. If you could spare a few monies, that will reduce the number of sponsors I need to take on at this time. I do helpful coaching if you want something more back for your money. Here are some examples of how you can feel afterwards. I loved chatting to Tumblr sexy man Christian Von Carmian. Heart emoji. Now I know how to purge the Xenos without relying on expensive Indomitor kill teams. Or, I have totally reversed my event win rate from 1 to 4 to 4 to 1. Thanks Christian for showing me that the Brood Brothers Auxilia has teeth. Or, I can't thank you enough for all the help and advice to know what to buy to get a good Penitent Host army. I used to be worried about losing every game, but with your support, I am losing every game, but this is the most fun I've ever had playing 40k. Now to explain my army list. Some of the things the army list can do, because they may be watching. The first block is a Canoness with the Litanies of Faith, so in the command phase, she takes a leadership test. If she passes it, I get a miracle dice. She leads 10 Insidiants, and there's an Imagifier in the unit, so 2+ armor save, 4+ invulnerable save. This is my witch hunting unit. A lot of people want to take psykers. Thousand Suns are very popular. The Librarius Conclave is very popular to take for Space Marines. So there's going to be librarians all over the place. Witch hunter units that get bonuses against psychic units are going to be valuable. I've gone for all of the things in this unit. Every upgrade and option I can take, including swapping out 2 of the Condemnation bolt pistols for hand flamers. What if there isn't a witch, or there is a witch, but that witch is behind loads and loads of infantry? Being able to kill some hordes is very valuable. The Canoness with them lets them use any of the stratagems for free. I do have 2 Canoness in this list, so although you can't use Sacred Command more than once per battle round, because 1 unit from your army can use Sacred Command per battle round, having 2 Canonesses means that I have the choice of where I use the ability. And I can pull out whatever stratagem I need. Insane Bravery? Maybe. Grenades/explosives is always a good choice. Or Faith and Fury. Even if I'm fighting a Psyker unit, having Lance can be useful because the Blessed Swords don't have anti-Psyker. The psyker I'm fighting may be toughness 3. Now I can wound them on a 2 with the null maces. And you can always think of it as, if I'm getting towards the end of the battle round, and I haven't used Sacred Command already, might as well use one of the stratagems that gives me an extra miracle dice if I kill at least one model. That's like a free miracle dice. I like collecting miracle dice. I'm not a super big fan of the Acts of Faith being about miracle dice, but while that's the army rule, I'm going to make use of the army rule. So the next unit is a jump canoness with the Clarion of Urgency and 5 Zephyrim. I usually take Seraphim, so I'm trying out a few more Zephyrim. The Zephyrim means that the canoness can drop into the enemy backline and maybe charge. You can charge anyway, but the Zephyrim have a banner that means you can re-roll the charge roll. That ups the likelihood of the canoness getting into combat, and it also works outside of Deep Strike, then charge. Be on the table, move very far, then charge. Once per game she can super smash, and because of an update to the Zephyrim rule, regardless of her weapon, in this case a halberd, she can have sustained hits or lethal hits. Or, if we charged, both. Both is good. It's nice that this ability no longer costs a miracle dice to use. The Zephyrim Superior does not have a plasma pistol. I am not taking any plasma weapons in this list. Plasma is not part of the Holy Trinity. It has to be a bolter, or a flamer, or a melter of some sort, then it goes in the list. Otherwise, not in the list. The Army of Faith has a stratagem to let a jump pack unit leave the board and then come back, but the Clarion of Urgency also allows me to do this. Essentially, I'm paying a very tiny amount of army construction points to have the option to use an ability for free. Maybe I don't want to remove the canoness from the board, but I can remove the canoness from the board. It also gives me another place where I can have a unit leave the board so that I can use Angelic Descent on a different Seraphim or Zephyrim unit. Then 2 of my units can leave the board at the end of the enemy turn, and I can come back in my turn, or a future time if I want to keep them in reserves for when I have a good secondary mission. The next block is a Palatine with a bolt pistol, and a Dialogus with Divine Aspect, with 10 Battle Sisters. The Battle Sisters have an Inferno pistol, a melter gun, and a multi-melter. The Divine Aspect means I can pick an enemy unit within 12 inches, they have to take a Battle Shock test, and if they fail, I get a Miracle Dice, plus the really cool bonus of the enemy unit is now Battle Shocked, and will not recover from Battle Shock unless they pass a Battle Shock test at the start of their turn. Otherwise, the enhancement I would have picked was the Blade of St. Eleanor, so the Palatine has precision, and if she gets to kill something, with her increased armor penetration, I get a Miracle Dice. Divine Aspect was cheaper, fit in the list, and it's a cool enhancement I want to use more because it's only 5 points. The Battle Sisters act as a literal bodyguard for the Palatine, meaning there's a lot of armor save 3+ bodies between her and death, and it gives the unit a bit of combat punch, because otherwise if the sisters get tied up in combat, they have to keep falling back, and then they get charged again, and then they fall back or they die. This gives the enemy a reason to not casually charge the Battle Sisters. The Dialogus does 2 cool things. On top of being incredibly pretty, she removes Battle Shock from a unit within 12 inches, and I want her near the Battle Sisters because the Battle Sisters have the highest objective control. If I'm going to control an objective, it should probably be with the Battle Sisters. Also, it increases their leadership. Good. Good, just having a Dialogus there. 1 better leadership than regular sisters. That makes it more likely that I'm going to pass things like a Battle Shock test that the enemy may force onto me. The second cool ability is, when I do an Act of Faith on her unit, the Dialogus changes the Miracle Dice into a 6. So I can pass leadership tests by taking any Miracle Dice and making it a 6, her leadership. So even if it's a Battle Shock test at -1, one of the dice becomes a 6, the other dice I roll, but it's going to be at least a 1, that's 7, that's enough. It also means if the unit fires Overwatch, I can take any Miracle Dice, it becomes a 6, and one of the Melter Shots is hit. And because the Palatine has lethal hits, that same Melter Shot has wounded. So don't run your elite characters or monsters at this unit. The next block is Junith Erewhita leading 10 Dominions. The Dominions have Melter Guns, Flamers would also be okay. Then I have a very nice Overwatch with the Flamers of Junith and the Flamers of the Dominions, plus the Hand Flamer of the Superior. They can't scout because Junith is in the unit and she doesn't have scout, but it's a block that can be a pain to pin down. If you move within 8 inches, the Dominions can move. If you try and shoot at Junith's unit, regardless of where she is, her unit has the benefit of cover because Junith gives them stealth. If you attack them in combat, you're always -1 to hit. And while Junith is alive, I can either give bad miracle dice to her in exchange for a command point, or I can risk rolling a leadership test to get an extra command point. It's a unit the enemy will want to destroy, but also need to commit surprising amount of force to destroy. And my final big block is Saint, one of the Saints, maybe Saint Celestine, Saint stand-in Celestine with her Zephyrim. A much bigger reaction force that can move very quickly around the board. If it takes some damage, Celestine can heal with her tears. We bring back some models. If the unit is entirely wiped out, Celestine can get back up on a 2+ and then use her healing tears to restore some models. Celestine was not affected by any rule that says sometimes when you bring back a character, they're outside of the attached unit and have unit strength 1. That happened to Necrons, that happened to Sisters in the Hallowed Martyrs, where one of our stratagems, Divine Intervention, stopped you from bringing back a character in a unit or bringing back a character and them still being considered part of the unit. So you couldn't resurrect a Hospitaller and then resurrect all the Sacrosancts that were around her previously. Celestine's the exception. Celestine can come back and then return some Zephyrim. Depending on what I'm fighting, the Zephyrim giving her sustained hits and lethal hits, well, she'll definitely take the sustained hits. Lethal hits are now optional in 11th edition. Because she has a sword that does devastating wounds, I may not want to take the lethal hits. It depends on the toughness of the enemy she's fighting and their armor save. If they have a low toughness and a good armor save, then I'll try for devastating wounds. If they have a high toughness and an armor save I'm going to go straight through, like some of the beastie creatures do, I'll stick with the lethal hits. And now the vehicle section. I have an Exorcist with Symphonic Payload to reroll the number of shots. They can fire indirectly, which is very useful, or they can trundle forward and direct fire at the enemy. I have a second Exorcist, which is unfortunately more expensive than the first one. Games Workshop really doesn't like indirect fire weapons. If it takes 2 Exorcists to destroy a Chimera, but that means that the unit inside falls out, is battle shocked, and then I can charge them with, say, my Insidiants or Celestine's unit, the Exorcists have done an amazing job. Otherwise, I'd be flailing at the side of a Chimera trying to get devastating wounds or lethal hits, hoping I get enough through to actually destroy the thing, and the enemy unit that was inside is going to be mostly fine. If an Exorcist destroys a vehicle, it deadly demises on a 5+, not a 6+. And in 11th edition, the unit inside disembarks, taking hazardous rolls, and then you check to see if the vehicle explodes. So that's death, and then more death. And then the enemy unit's battle shocked. Yeah, the Exorcists are good at taking out transports. I've got 1 Castigator. Sensible army listing, would suggest you have 2 Castigators and maybe 1 Exorcist. Probably Immolator instead. The Castigator's very good. You shoot an enemy unit, and then the rest of your army gets an extra point of armor penetration against them for the rest of the phase. Armor penetration of -1 is no longer eaten up by the benefit of cover, so when I fire my Castigator battle cannon, which does have ignore cover, it hits on a 3. That enemy is then Rites of Castigation yurned, and the bolt guns of my sisters, the bolters of my dominions, are now AP -1. The melter weapons of my dominions and battle sisters are AP -5. If you're something like an Orc Meganob that has a 2+ armor save, but no invulnerable save, you're gonna have a very bad time. It removes the risk of that 6+ save from working. Then the final little units. I have a Mortifier. They're very nice for a little bit of extra fire support because I've got 2 heavy bolters. Do not expose them just to fire 2 heavy bolters. They do not stand up to much, and I find that they get hit by just the right amount of damage to destroy them. They can be used as a non-expensive unit that can go and complete an action. I'm going to be playing the reconnaissance disposition, so some of the missions have actions involved. The unit doing the action may not survive very long, but that's why it's great to have a disposable modifier. They get destroyed, they give me a miracle dice, and if they're destroyed in combat, I have Fight on Death 2+, which makes them a very useful blocking unit. The enemy hits them, they take some damage on a 2+, assuming I can roll some decent hit rolls, and then the modifier is removed, hopefully leaving better units available to counterattack and do a lot of damage to the enemy. It's basic screening. There's a thing in the way that isn't the most valuable unit in my army. I have a unit of 5 Seraphim with hand flamers. Their job is to land in the enemy deployment zone. They can score things like behind enemy lines. If there's an enemy unit that's lots of light infantry, say 10 Chaos Cultists, I can burn them with the 2 sisters that each have 2 hand flamers in the unit, plus 3 other bolt pistols. Remember, no plasma. The God Emperor doesn't like it if you take plasma. The other 10 Seraphim I usually deploy on the table. 4 of them have Inferno pistols. So if there's an enemy unit that's rather tough, like Terminators, like a light tank, like elite infantry that have 3 wounds, like Tyranid Warriors for example, the Seraphim can move very quickly, get within 3 inches ideally, or 6 inches if we can't, fire their Inferno pistols and take out the enemy elite infantry. Hand flamers will do nothing against those units, and across the rest of the army I have enough like low damage attacks from Zephyrim swords, from some bolters and heavy bolters, and a lot of combat attacks from my Celestians, so that I should be able to deal with quite a lot of Horde units. Unless everything is a Horde, then I might be waiting for a bit. But there are a few hand flamers around. The 5 Seraphim have 4 hand flamers, the 10 Insidiants have 2 hand flamers, Junith has a big heavy flamer, and her Dominion Superior has a hand flamer. I should have enough tools to deal with the enemy regardless of what they are. A swarm of little people, or even a big Titan, hypothetically. But I'm not taking Sacrosands, I'm taking Insidiants. I'm not going all Seraphim, I'm taking a lot of Zephyrim. There's no Immolator to split units, so I have more units, so I have more screens, or I have units that can stay on the home objective with a Simulacrum and generate me more Miracle Dice. I'm taking Exorcists. Big shooty church organs. And there's no one big block of Paragon Warsuits with Morwen Val to target the enemy's elite troops and their biggest monsters and vehicles. Instead, my army is going to have to work together to destroy that big thing. Spotting from Seraphim, Castigator Rites of Castigation, Exorcist shooting, some devastating wounds. As long as I can apply the right bits at the right time, I will do well enough. It's a challenge of skill. And if I lose my first game, I go into the losers bracket and I can keep smashing people there. Just like you do at any other kind of tournament. But I hope I've made it clear that I'm not too bothered if I win this event. I know there are players who are really trying, but this edition I'm going to be even more chill than in the past. If my tournament average is currently 4 wins and 1 loss, I'm happy for that to drop down to 3 wins and 2 losses if it means I play fun and silly lists that shouldn't work, but I get them to work, so far off meta that it loops round to being good again. I'm not planning to go to many tournaments in the future, but that's another video. Wish me the luck of the Emperor in the games, and I will have battle reports for you soon. My darlings and viewers, have a great day of 40k.